Yeah, you tell her. You fucking tell him, Ellie.
Hello, and welcome to the final episode of The Last of Us HBO Spoilercast, where we've been talking about each episode of the show as it is aired. And today we get to not only recap the season finale, but also the show as a complete finished whole. I'm Phil, or AK Black and Red, and on this channel I talk about The Last of Us a lot, along with other survival and horror themed video games. So if that's your thing, then be sure to subscribe. This week, I'm joined by Abby, aka Opaling Cosplay, producer for Spores Productions and the official Atreus cosplayer for God of War Ragnarok. Dee, a slam poet, PhD researcher, and sex blogger. And Will, who runs Resident Evil Central, as well as being my co-producer for the Horror Game of the Year Awards. As the name implies, spoilers lie ahead for The Last of Us on HBO, up to and including the Season 1 finale. So if you haven't watched it yet, then I highly recommend you do so before proceeding. As ever, there'll also be spoilers for the game because we'll be talking about kind of the differences and similarities, but you don't necessarily have to play the game to follow along. So as long as you're aware of that, it should be all right to proceed. But make sure you've watched the show at least before you go on. Spoilers lie ahead. So, for the very last time this season, let's dive in. By way of a recap, Joel and Ellie have been on a very long journey to find the Fireflies, who may be able to use Ellie's immunity to the Cordyceps brain infection to make a cure. And this week, we start by flashing back to Ellie's mother, Anna, who's heavily pregnant and on the run from the infected, before the Fireflies find Joel and Ellie. So, what we're going to do this week is, as usual, we're going to start with our reviews of the episode as a whole before deep diving into events. But this time, I'm going to ask everyone to give your review of the individual episode and then give your kind of overall review, what you think of it as a complete season. And that'll be kind of our starting point before we go into specifics and details. So, just going in the order I can see on my Discord screen. Dee, do you want to kick off?
Well, if you listened last week and all the predictions we made about what would happen and what the ending of the episode was don't we feel stupid? Because no, none of that. Not a jot of it. I thought it was beautifully done. It was so faithful to the source material. And even having Anna giving birth felt like it should maybe have already been in the game. Then that should be a cutscene or a bit that you play running through the woods as Anna. Put it in, stuff it in. It worked really well. I will say the only thing I'm going to say, apart from I loved it, is it was really nice for once to see a woman in labour on a film or on a TV thing, on any sort of media's waters break, and it's not blood. They managed to get across the fact that this baby was imminent without having it be in danger because blood everywhere. Because honestly, it's just a lot of water. It's generally not bloody.
Yeah. So, overall on the episode, you're a fan?
Loved it. Even though I didn't cry. I nearly cried, but I didn't cry.
And
I was too busy going, are they going to do what I thought they were going to do? No.
And what about now that we've got the whole 9-episode package? What are your thoughts of it as Last of Us Season 1 in a nutshell?
Last of Us Season 1 in a nutshell, if I was to do it as a noise, that noise would be "whoa." If I was to do it as a random word, that word would be smashing. And if I was to do it as a not so random word, that word would be It was brilliant. As I said to you at the time, right, so start again from the beginning, back to back then. And you looked at me in horror. It has to be said, like, oh God, no. But yeah, I absolutely love the entire thing, and I cannot wait for season 2.
Cool. And we will get to talk about thoughts about season 2 later on, with a spoiler warning for anyone who's not familiar with that later in the episode. But long before then, Abby, do you want to go next? Tell us your thoughts on the episode 9 first of all?
Yeah. I loved it. As mentioned, I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't stray too far. It was pretty much beat for beat how the game ends, but with a complete tonal shift. It felt a lot more somber than the end of the game. You know, they really cleverly tweaked certain parts for us to really connect with Joel and really kind of portray Joel more so as the good guy. Whereas in the game, obviously, it's a lot more violent and it's a lot more like ambiguous, if that's the right word, of who, like, you know, what Joel's doing isn't right. And so it was really interesting that they added those extra bits that made Joel a lot softer, which obviously then were peppered in throughout the series as well. Loved the Anna part. It was quite funny because I was in the other room. My partner started like put it on, and I was in the other room, and I could just hear Ashley Johnson obviously like gasping and like making sounds as she was running through woods, and I was like, "That's Ashley Johnson!" and came like running in to start it. Yeah, we'll talk about it more in detail, but it's really interesting how it pretty much like Left Behind. You know, the Left Behind episode, it really just followed the game beat for beat, just added some tiny extra parts that made it more impactful and changed the tone. And I really loved it. And I think it's a good solid end for people that haven't played the game, and then also obviously a satisfying end for people that have.
Yep. And what's your final verdict on the season as a whole then from that?
It did exactly what it said on the tin, you know. It was a series based on a franchise we all love. I think they got the characters perfectly. There's not one character in it that I'm like, didn't really work. Like everyone, it was like experiencing it for the first time, seeing everyone's own take on the characters, but then also getting just the expansion on that world, which is what I wanted, you know, seeing a little bit of like pre-breakout and seeing more backstories of like Bill and Frank, and you know, more of Ellie and Riley. So I think it's been a really solid first season, and I'm intrigued to see how the second season goes and how closely they're going to follow The Last of Us Part 2.
Yep. Cool. And Will, what about yourself?
I think I'd probably sum up as like probably the best roller coaster of the season. He gave us the most beautiful moments. He gave us the most brutal moments. And I should explain about the switch in tone and everything else. I think it really suited to how the season ended at the final scene. And I really did like the initial scene of Ashley Johnson, but I feel it was a bit of a stumbling block, and I'll talk about that a bit later when we discuss it. I actually loved the scene, and overall it was probably my favourite episode. But yeah, I'll say we'll go later into that episode a bit later. But yeah.
Yep. And how about the season as a whole from that then?
I think it really added on for bits of the people who enjoy the games. That really gave us more than what we were expecting. I think a lot of the like Bill and Frank episodes and such, it really brought out that story more, and seeing those more human moments was I absolutely loved. And I know, like, it is the best adaptation, I think, from a video game. I don't think anyone can deny that. And it's, an absolutely amazing season, and I can't wait to see what's coming next.
Yeah. I mean, I'd echo pretty much everything that you guys have said. I mean, as far as this episode has gone, I think the only kind of point that it's not even a criticism of the show. I think it's actually a strength of the show, but in a kind of weird backhanded way. The one scene where Joel goes to give Ellie the boost up to the ladder, and then she's too distracted to do it, obviously is lifted kind of exactly from the game. But one of the things when you play the game in that moment, the reason that has such an impact there is because you've done this one moment, this boost, and get a thing to be able to climb up a thing 1,000 times. And so it's like all of a sudden a surprise of like, oh, hold on, what's this? And that's where a lot of the impact comes from in the game. And the scene's still like well acted and kind of portrays, like the way they did it, kind of having Joel out of shot and having like kind of his voice distance from when you're looking from Ellie's point of view. They've done it really, really well, but it doesn't impact in the same way. But ironically, that kind of shows why when people have been saying about changes that have been made in the show, that's a demonstration of why those changes needed to be made. It's like, because it's a different medium and you can't have that impact land in exactly the same way. So that was just a kind of weird takeaway from that one particular point from me. Was just like, yeah, I think the other thing that stood out as well was, and I've been saying it leading up to it, and this is one thing I think I'm glad to have been right on, was when Joel's sort of transformation at the end and that sort of Rambo in First Blood, man pushed too far, does unthinkable thing. It was just absolutely perfectly executed, in my opinion, as far as that goes. And that also, again, it has even more impact because Pedro Pascal's Joel is not the same as Troy Baker's Joel, because he's got that softness to him. He's been having that doubt. He's been having panic attacks and things like that. And then, you see when he needs to, when everything's on the line, it just, that switch, it just worked so well. And I think that kind of, so if they'd have fumbled this episode, they could have potentially thrown the whole season, like, for everything, but that clinched it and just made it all worth it as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'll make a quick plug because this is on my channel, so I can. But my full review of the full season is actually up on YouTube. I've kind of talked about it in a lot more length than here, so there'll be a little card you can click if you want to watch that. But don't do it until you watch this, because obviously we've got lots more to talk about,
including giraffes.
including
We got the giraffe. I was so happy.
Well, on that, I don't know if anyone else saw this. There was a load of people talking about the giraffe scene, and I've seen quite a lot of people saying like they thought that CGI giraffe looked really bad, and it was a real giraffe.
Real giraffe.
And it's just like
my day job is I'm a writer for a creative website, and I wrote an article about, and it was literally just titled, "Wait, The Last of Us giraffe was real?" Because I was watching it and I thought it was CGI. It really looked like CGI. So when I saw the behind the scenes videos with Bella and Pedro with a real giraffe, I was like, what?
Yeah, I think it was because they had it surrounded by the blue screens surrounding the enclosure. So like, obviously the backdrop with St. Mary's Hospital was all CGI'd in, and then I think some of the greenery was CGI as well, which was a weird choice. I don't know if they were feeding the giraffe leaves anyway. I don't know why they CGI'd, but I think that part of it was like probably kind of made it a bit uncanny valley-y, and then obviously people took from that and looked, and giraffes are weird creatures anyway, so they looked at it.
Yeah,
that's not a real giraffe.
Call that a giraffe? This is a giraffe. I see you've played giraffe before. Yeah. So it's been a long week, and I know.
Yeah. And if you've got that, let us know in the comments, because that means you know the right things to reference. If you're doing a Captain America, I understood that reference. But I think as well, it says something that I think that's the only time that any kind of effects have been picked up on in the show. Like anyone said it looks bad was a giraffe. Yeah, the only time that an effect looked bad wasn't the like fake monsters; it was the real animal. So I think that says a lot about the quality of effects as well.
I don't even think it looked bad. It was just such a weird. I found the same with the bloater though. I thought the bloater was entirely CGI, but then in the behind the scenes stuff, they've got a full prosthetic bloater. So I don't really know what's going on there. Whether it's just the fact when you film in that sort of environment and then try and replace the light, it just doesn't quite work, or
maybe there's a filter of some sort that they put on that sort of distorted it ever so slightly.
I love the idea of the bloater being like selfie. Using an Instagram filter. Selfie.
Yeah, because I think the bloater suit that they put out, like, which apparently weighed like 40 pounds as well, was like it was what do you call it? That was kind of for reference for the actors and performance, whereas the actual one that they looked at the end was they built the CGI over it. So
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know whether that affected how it looked or whatever, but that was kind of how I understand it, because the photos I've seen of the bloater in costume don't look like the bloater I've seen on the actual screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just weird they'd go to that length to make the whole suit and then not use it.
Yeah, because it cost like $500,000 as well, didn't it? $500,000, so much stupid.
Yeah,
Crazy.
the
Crazy.
guy needs to be keeping that for like cosplay events. And
Yeah.
Leak it out up his jumper. Like, yeah.
just walking out fully dressed as a bloater. Like, I'm just going to the shops. Okay, so yeah, I mean the giraffe obviously was a weird thing to like point to contention as well. I was surprised by that, but
I didn't care because I was too busy watching Bella Ramsey's face light up and being just full of joy. Honestly, they could have had like a mop with a picture of a giraffe stuck to it and I'd have still been watching the joy on her face and the joy on Pedro Pascal's face in that scene, because it was just so touching. And the way she giggled and what have you, it was just the acting in that, maybe not so much from the giraffe, but from Bella and Pedro was amazing.
Yeah, and the whole bit where I feel like we're skipping ahead of your
yeah.
your
No,
lovely
it's
schedule.
fine. I didn't really have anything like kind of notes on these parts, so we just say whatever comes up, and then I'll circle back to the questions at some point.
But the bit before where Ellie had been like so reserved, and you could really tell she was still feeling the effects of obviously what had happened in the last episode, even though that was a long time, well, you know, a considerable amount of time ago, considering Joel was all healed up. But you could tell obviously Ellie was really kind of scarred from that still. So suddenly seeing that little bit of like light come through, and just Joel didn't even look at the giraffe barely. Like he literally was just watching Ellie. He did not look at the giraffe after they got up there. I was like, oh,
I know. So
Yeah, and he opens up to Ellie a lot more as well than I mean, we get that scene again in the game. We get that moment with the giraffe, and then we get the conversation pretty much exactly as it is with the what you think of everything you hope for. We don't have to do this after everything I've done. Happy for nothing, all that sort of stuff. And then later on, the opening up where it was like in the game, like Ellie gives the picture of Joel and Sarah back to him, and he kind of finally takes it like as a sign, you know, he's finally able to kind of move on and heal. Whereas instead, we get that conversation where they stop for a moment, and Joel finally talks about something which I think we may have discussed it on here before, or we discussed something related to it in terms of Pittsburgh and Kansas City, because there was a reference to Joel having attempted suicide in the game we mentioned, but we get like kind of the confirmation of it from the story. And obviously where he says, I was the guy who missed, and talks about that. And then obviously that line that brought you close to tears, where we're saying, you know, it wasn't time that healed the wound.
it was all the medikits I picked up.
Yeah.
yeah, that was a really nice moment. It was again, it's just been really interesting how they've really softened Joel, and not in the way of like, oh, he's a big softie, but of like him opening up more, and him. I really felt in this episode like Joel was really trying to appease Ellie, whereas in the game I don't feel that happens. Like Joel and Ellie are mutually understanding of each other in the games, but whereas in this, Joel seems to suddenly really care for Ellie as a daughter. You know, the whole bit where like, oh, you know, I found a guitar, I should teach you, and if you'd like to learn. Whereas in the game, it's just sort of like a really passing comment of that Joel's quite distant from. So it's just really interesting how they've made Joel almost a bit more possessive of Ellie.
Yeah, the whole tone around Joel and Ellie, I think, had had flipped a bit from what I remember in the games. In the
Yeah.
games, it was like, oh, there's a guitar. I'll teach you how to play, because of course you'd want to learn how to play. But in the episode, it was like, oh, if you want. But it also felt like he felt like he was losing her a bit, and he was really over trying. Because in the game, the bit where he's talking about like, oh, I think you'd have liked Sarah. I think you'd have got on with each other because you're funny, what have you. In the game, it's sort of like, okay, these are just things I'm saying. I can say these things out loud because I've come to terms with it a bit better. In the episode, it really felt more like he was trying to fill the silence just so she didn't ask him that question.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
definitely. It's when he asked for the pun book as well.
Yeah.
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 Because we've got the silence on both sides of that, then haven't we? Really, the silence before it all happens, where he's kind of worried about how she feels after what happened to David and what might come in the future, and then the silence after, where it's all about obviously what he's done and his actions and how she might take that, given everything that's led up to that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it works really well the way they've done it, and like I do like that. But again, it's probably testament to the fact we've not had the chance to spend like 15 hours directly, like kind of behind Pedro Pascal's Joel with our hands on the controller, kind of. So that sort of level of subtlety that you get with that doesn't necessarily you can't do that in a TV show. So I think they definitely made the right call as far as softening him up in that sense and giving us more of those sides that work better. Again, when he's not, as we mentioned before, strangling countless thousands of men on his route.
Yeah. No, definitely. It makes the episodes in the season flow. There's no really if they get the game from like in Resident Evil films and stuff where they put the quotes in from the games, it's like, oh, cringe. Like there's no standout moments. It's like just watching stories unfold. It's not like you're not watching an adaptation of a video game.
Yeah. And
I think if there was no video game, it would still have stood up as a really good
100%.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been interesting. I don't know again how much kind of talk about this you guys have watched from different people on places like TikTok and Twitter and wherever else, but it's interesting seeing the kind of takes that people are coming out with who've not seen the show, who've not played the game, and they're kind of seeing the show, and that's their obviously it's not there'd be different opinions, but I think there's a lot more kind of taking it at face value and a lot of just sort of it works as it is, whereas and I think we've done this as well with the game where we obviously a lot more critical in the sense of, well, in the game they did this versus this, and it works differently. I had a bigger emotional experience because it was me doing this, which is that kind of thing. Which I suppose we're lucky and unlucky that we got to do that first, because we don't get to experience it completely blind, and fresh. But I mean, kind of circling back to the start of the episode, we open obviously with Anna, who's Ellie's mother, played by Ashley Johnson, getting bit as she gives birth to Ellie. Now, this doesn't completely explain that it's only a theory, even in universe, but it kind of hints at how the reason for Ellie's immunity. So, how do we feel about this and about what this did? I mean, I want to come to you first with this, Will, because you mentioned it about being like a bump in the road and stuff. So I imagine you've got some thoughts on this, and whether it's better the way it is, or whether we could have had a more explicit explanation, or we had not even a hint. Obviously, there's a number of ways we could have gone, but you want to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would have preferred more to have not an explanation and just have it remain as the mystery of it all. How it's sort of portrayed and how it's shown. The conversation that Marlene has with her before she's about to pass away, where she was saying, I cut the cord before he bit me. You can sort of see on Marlene's face where she's realised, I don't think you did. I think maybe you have been bitten. And it makes me think, if she knew that Ellie was immune, and she would go to any length to find the cure and cure humanity, maybe it might have been more of a potential to maybe look at trying to replicate that. I know it's a horrible thing, but you could kind of see if that's what she's willing to do anything to save humanity. She might be able to go to that depth. And that's why I kind of liked it more as a mystery and not just having it as she's just a unique person.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of more reflective of real life as well, right? Because like obviously when people are immune to stuff, there's not necessarily some sort of origin story for that. That's just how the antibodies and whatever in their body work. But what about yourself, Abby? Did your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a very cool concept. And it was really cool to see Ashley Johnson in it, and that whole poetic thing of, her being Ellie's mother when she was the first Ellie. But I do agree that by adding that bit of context, it almost not dulls the character origins, but adds to that desperation, like takes away from that desperation of like no one knows why Ellie's immune. She's just like that. So I almost feel it takes away at that a little bit of that desperation. And I agree, if Marlene knew why Ellie was immune, they have an answer, you get it in that's how you go about doing it. Because I have issues with the whole Firefly way of them digging into her brain I have whole issues with the way they're trying to find the cure. Like from the game originally, not just the show. But it made me, it's interesting because it flipped on its head again of like me almost turning me off Marlene's character because, she was there for Ellie's birth. But then as a Firefly, she put Ellie in Fedra school.
Yeah.
Knowing that she would then go up against Ellie in the future. And then at the end, when there's the whole bit with Joel and Marlene, and Marlene's like, I know the pain like you. I'm the only person that knows, I was there when she was born. And it's like, but you gave her up to Fedra school, and then you didn't ask her, if you promised Anna you would look after her and raise her. It's just, it was an interesting shift of it turned me off Marlene's character a lot more. And again, made me side with Joel more over in the games when it's really there's a lot more questions floating around, whereas in this there's a lot more definitive answers.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like that's deliberate, or that just it's kind of happened because they made those choices, or do you think that was planned out to make it more definitive?
I think it's on. I do think everything had a purpose. Like knowing Neil Druckmann and knowing how Craig writes, I think it's on purpose of putting you off of those characters more to side with Joel. But then I guess that could come into question because we don't know how season 2 is going to go, and we don't know. I don't want to say things because we're not in the spoiler bit yet. So
yeah, no, fair
enough.
But
it makes you want, side with Joel a lot more.
Yeah. What about yourself, Dee? Thoughts on all of this?
I kind of liked it. I liked the idea that Fedra knew that she was immune, and they knew how it had happened. Now, for me, Marlene putting Ellie into Fedra school wasn't that big an issue because it was the one place she was pretty much guaranteed to be safe. I would have liked to have seen in that case, if that was the reasoning for it, more of a conversation between Marlene and Ellie, because Ellie just refers to her as someone who knew my mum and has no idea about the depth of that bond. I like to think that it was a bit of a red herring. Either there's like Fedra have got some sort of Gattaca style laboratories where they've got all these pregnant women and they're biting them to see if they can mimic this and redo this.
Yeah.
Or it was a red herring and it was nothing to do with that. It was absolutely nothing to do with that because the science hasn't really worked all the way through this, has it? I had issues with the whole digging into her brain to get a cure thing. I was like, for goodness sake. And it's like a vaccine is not the same as an antidote, and don't even get me started.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
conversation we have in Resident Evil lore as well about vaccines versus
like-
antidotes.
Yeah.
yeah, right. A vaccine was okay. So, but I didn't mind it. It kind of, I just didn't pay too much attention to it, if I'm honest. I was like, there's things that can happen, and you think it might end up with that, but I think she was just immune, and the Anna definitely going, I did it beforehand, was so that she wouldn't turn, and nobody knew she was going to be immune from that.
Mm.
And honestly, a tiny little baby goes ah and starts like that would have been A, hilarious, B, terrifying, and C, quite easily dealt with, I feel. So there wasn't really that much of an issue, I don't think. At some
No.
point
I
they'd have
had-
killed the baby.
I had absolutely no issue with it at all. I thought it was a really
Yeah.
cool sequence.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it ended at the exact right time. They didn't dwell on it too long. They didn't then
Yeah,
try
yeah.
and bring it in at a later date. They didn't then bring in Marlene, bringing it up later on, So I think
But
it was
Marlene, but even when Marlene was saying, I'm the only one who understands, I was sat there going, no, you bloody don't. You've got
yeah.
no idea, mate.
No.
So yeah, I agree with you on that, Abby. I was like, no, you don't. No,
Yeah.
you weren't there. You shoved her off to boarding school.
Yeah,
Had her back when it suited you.
I think. I mean, they like I say, I wish that they'd not done it the way they did, or maybe she was already born and they'd done something else where it didn't feel like an explanation. But I think, given that they did do that, they kind of gave it the right level of ambiguity. They didn't do that thing which we see in like so many kind of. It's so easy to go into that cheesy sci-fi thing, isn't it? Where it's sort of like, the bite and then and now the antibodies are soaring through the umbilical cord, and we know that Ellie is immune. Dun, dun, and theme music comes on or whatever.
This is not an episode of House with graphics.
Yeah, I'm glad that they just kind of left it as a implication, as a possibility, as a hint, rather than as a kind of actually saying this is definitely what happened. I mean, they did the same with the bread and the flour and stuff. There were clues there, but it's still not definitive. People still, even in the world, they don't know for definite. They're kind of like, maybe my life was saved because I didn't have pancakes, but I don't know for sure. Which I don't know. I'd take the pancakes over staying safe. But so I mean, I think. I mean, it would help if I read my own show notes, because I've just realised now that the next question I had was about Joel's suicide, and then how what that mean, Joel's attempted suicide, and what that means for his character arc versus Ellie's. But we're gonna come back to that, I think, because I think talking around this, there's a lot more to say in terms of Marlene's stakes in it, Joel's decision and what he did, and kind of what that all means and everything else. So, we've kind of already, I think, talked about Marlene's character and like what this means. And I know, obviously, Dee and Abby have both come fairly in the camp of fuck Marlene. But I mean, in terms of what we already knew about her from previous, I mean, we didn't know overly much. We saw her in one episode, was it 1 or 2 episodes before? And kind of as this revolutionary leader, and she wanted Ellie taken for reasons that didn't become clear until she was out of the picture already. But I mean, I'll come back to you again, Will, because I think you haven't really had a chance to talk about Marlene's character specifically. Like, how do you feel about how that kind of affects her position in things?
It's a tough one because she sort of comes off a bit like a bad guy in the with how she was taking it with all, and I don't know how to put it.
Yeah. I mean, I was always interested in, like, especially a lot of the debates and, like, kind of discourse that come from this back when it first came out and also now about kind of the choice that Joel made to go and save Ellie and kind of everyone, like, taking sides. And there were a lot of people obviously saying, like, well, you know, he did all this and he's robbed Ellie of a choice. Whereas I feel like, especially in the show now, but even in the game to a huge degree, they made it quite explicit that Ellie wasn't given a choice by the Fireflies. The Fireflies were doing this, and Joel didn't have a choice to do anything. He was being marched out at gunpoint as the one person he'd come to love and care for was about to die, unceremoniously. Like I feel like a lot of people then talk about, was he right, was he wrong, or whatever else. Whereas the actual kind of ambiguity comes from the fact that he lies to her later and stuff like that. It's not in that moment. I don't think you're meant to kind of question his actions. You're not meant to go, but actually, should you let these this armed group walk you out and then kill a child? You know, is that maybe morally okay? I don't feel like that was as much of a dilemma as people have kind of made it out to be since. I don't know.
I think, yeah. No, I think it's. I think it was a bit silly of it, to be honest, to see. She knows how powerful Joel is and what he's been through. I think it was a bit of a mistake to kind of put him in that situation. Like, you can see from how he talks about Ellie at that moment how much he like doesn't want her to die, and how much they've survived with each other. That's put him in that situation. He's going to react that way. He's very protective over her. They've been through so much. Like, he's basically said she's the one that got us through all this, and yeah, it was definitely a downfall at that point.
Dee, what about you?
Sorry, I was just reading about Mel Dandridge, so I got distracted. Sorry, ADHD. What about Marlene and the way she dealt with Joel?
Yeah,
If
and
she had any sense, she'd have shot him. I mean, like, take him out to the highway, give him his stuff, and make sure he's out. Oh, shut up! Either shoot him or accept he's going to mow a bunch of mother fudges down. Like, it was obvious how he felt about Ellie. Yeah. Absolutely obvious. And it was obvious the first chance he got, he was going to unload a massive value-sized can of whoop-ass on everybody. And she was like, yeah, no, if she had any sense.
Yeah.
I don't know whether she was doing the whole, oh, well, we're going to kill Ellie, but actually he did get her here and we owe him something, so we won't kill him. I think she's just as culpable in the death of all her people and her own as anyone else. Because, like,
is this her trying to be still be the good guy despite what she's doing? Then do you think?
I think she's trying to convince herself there's still a spark of okay about her. Because, like, who makes that kind of decision? Like, if you have to make, it's like that whole last episode was decisions. Joel's decisions, Marlene's decisions. Marlene's decision was to go along with Jerry, as I said at the time, and kill the child to save mankind, which was ridiculous. Because how are they going to do that anyway? Are they going to rock up and say, hello, Fedra, like, we've got this cured, you've got the distribution network, think you could get it out to everybody? What were they going to do? How are they going to, they're living in cloud bloody cuckoo land thinking they could kill Ellie and it was going to make everything better. No. So Marlene makes this stupid decision, right? And, like, we've watched enough episodes of House. They can do brain surgery without killing people. Like, they didn't. If Jerry was like any sort of surgeon worth his salt, he could have done both, and it would have all been fine. But no, they've got to kill Ellie. So yeah, if she's going to kill Ellie, she should have killed Joel. But having made one really horrible, untenable decision, she decided that no, I'm still a good person. No, you're not. You're a wuss. Shoot Joel or shut up.
Well, you know, be careful from those splinters sitting on the fence there.
No.
Yeah.
Fuck off, Marlene. No.
I think she's controlling very much like David. I think she's seen everyone as a tool, and she's thinking, can I turn Joel to our side and use him because
Yeah.
like she would be unstoppable if she had Joel on side with the Fireflies. They could literally probably take over everything, but she just
But
made
they
that
wouldn't,
one
'cause
fatal error.
he'd be on a sheep ranch on the moon, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Sheep ranch.
Oh no.
What about you, Abby? Any more thoughts to add on the kind of Marlene's character and actions?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't really have too much more to add on. I do think it was a conscious design choice to almost make Marlene the bad guy in this. Because a lot of what she says just doesn't actually line up with her previous actions, and it makes you be like, well, no, we're not listening to you. You know, there's a scene in the second game where, I mean, this is kind of spoilery, but it's not too much, where Marlene is having a conversation with Jerry, who's obviously the surgeon that's working on Ellie, and she says to Jerry, you know, what if it was your daughter? And Jerry just doesn't answer. So, you know, Marlene's got her answer. She knew that Joel, as a father figure, any bit of brain power, he didn't want that. And again, Joel had this like nasty, horrible reputation back in their QZ. She knew it was silly of her not to assume. You know, again, they should have shot him if they should have shot him. You know.
Yeah.
If she, as opposed to, but no, she has to try and take that moral high ground and believe that it's all for the good of humanity, when in you know, in their reality, she knows that any parent will do what they can to look after their child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that kind of, again, coming back to this point of like making Joel more sympathetic and making Marlene more out to be the bad guy, obviously once he's pushed there, Joel then kills every single soldier in his way in this like absolutely gorgeously done scene with the music that's on everything like is like perfect. I think about the way they do that, and it just looks so important. You can see that the point he's been pushed to, he snaps. But at the same time, once he's in the operating room, the two nurses, he puts the gun to them and makes them unhook Ellie, but he spares their lives because they're not directly in his way. He's not going, you know, he's not going on some kind of like natural born killer style killing spree just for the fun of it. He's got a purpose, and anyone in his way is there. But if they're not in his way, you know, he spares their lives and lets them carry on. Which also, I think, at this point makes Laura Bailey the only game cast member to actually survive the show.
Well, we know who Abby's going to be.
Yeah.
Which was quite an interesting point that was brought up to me in conversation of. I feel like we'll talk about this more at the end, because that's kind of a wider discussion of how season 2 will go and how people weren't happy with the direction of the second game, but how they could have changed it slightly to introduce characters at a later date. Completely lost the point of what I was saying then. But going back to Marlene slightly, yeah, I feel like throughout the series they almost painted her as a bit more of a bad guy. You know, the whole bit when Riley's like, Marlene's sending me away. And I asked Marlene if you could join the Fireflies, Ellie, but she said no. It's just quite interesting. Because in the first game I was, you know, I had no feelings against Marlene. I had no like particularly strong feelings about her as a character until the end when Joel shot her. I was like, this really could have been avoided. So it was quite interesting. By the end I was just like, just shoot her, Joel.
Yeah. And that again, I mean, again, obviously that was like directly from the game, but at that point, if she's in the basement and she's got away from the massacre, she should have just not confronted, just said, okay, I'll step back and leave. She had to push that bit further and go, well, come on, can you turn around? I know you've just killed everyone to do this, but maybe rethink it.
Yeah, there's still time, Joel. There's still time. But I thought the whole point of Jerry being killed and he was the only one that can make this. I have issues with
But they
Jerry
didn't have books.
and all of that. But carry on.
Yeah.
I want to hear your issues with Jerry.
I'm a frivolous Jerry hater. This is a no Jerry zone. No, I mean that's a bit off topic, I guess, but or like more so to the end. But I have very big issues with the fact there was one doctor in that whole facility that could have done the operation. There was no research written down, nothing that could have meant they tried it on other people, and the fact that they were operating. I loved the whole thing of Joel going through the hospital and following the signs to get to like. This hospital was abandoned. Why did they still go and do it in that same room?
More importantly, why was this a hospital where following the signs actually led you to the place where you wanted to be? I've never been in a hospital like that.
No.
So yeah, I mean, we'll come back to frivolous Jerry hates, I think, in the spoiler for part 2 section. But as far as like this kind of point, B or Will, do you any more to add on Marlene and Joel's spree and how it played out?
It looked like the game. When he went round killing everybody, that's what struck me. All the way through, they've kind of shied away from this whole bit. Like in the museum, there weren't as many clickers. In other bits, that like when they went through the shopping mall, there was not as many clickers. There weren't as many like infected or anything running around where it came to the combat thing. Because as you rightly said, Joel would be just like, fuck this, I'm knackered, right? But in that last bit, the way it was shot, it looked like I was watching you play the game. And I thought that was absolutely awesome. It was
That's probably overselling my gameplay skills, I think, but yeah.
It looked like watching you play the game. It looked like a game. And I thought that was brilliant, the way they managed to incorporate that to look like the game, whereas the other combat, where it wasn't just Joel like AK-47, when you absolutely positively got it, shoot every motherfucker in the room except no substitute, right? And he just goes but wild, and he does in the game, and it was the same. And that showed that actually some of the combat could have been the same, and it was. And I just thought it was really clever and really cool.
Yeah. No, it was short and sweet. It was just the right amount, because if it was another TV series, it probably would have been half an hour, just this sequence of just him clearing out the entire place. But no, it's I loved how it was just short and sweet, and the whole where the sound went completely quiet. I think that was probably a sign of like being in Joel's mind. He's just zoned out. He's just literally, I'm going to find Ellie. That's it.
It desensitizes the viewer to
and
what
he's
the
deaf in
actions
one ear,
actually
isn't
are.
he?
Yeah.
So
That's yeah. I just look how like where he was shooting them in their stomach or their leg or whatever, and they're just lying on the floor. He could have left them, but he knows I've got to clear this place out. I can have no one left because I don't want my secret to be found out. Because he knows he's going to kill absolutely everyone, and obviously to save Ellie, he doesn't want a word of this to get out.
Plus, if he leaves anyone behind, then they could come after him.
Exactly.
Again, this is what I was being about Marlene. Shoot him, you idiot! Don't nail me behind.
No.
I was going to ask questions about like as the kind of central dilemma of this. I suppose I don't necessarily think it's a dilemma in the same way a lot of people talk about it, but it's always this question of like, sacrifice one life to save the world, or is that going too far? But I mean, I've got my own thoughts on that, not only in terms of what the answer to that question is, but also whether that's actually the question being asked by the show on the game, because I don't necessarily think it is. But I'm interested to kind of hear your takes on it in terms of, is that actually the point of this, or is that kind of a distraction from, like, I think people, or of people taking it in a different direction? So, Will, have you got any thoughts on this in terms of the big question, I suppose?
Yeah. No, I think it. Yeah, I don't think it was. it wasn't a big point in the series, I think, and in the games. It's literally it's to feed that whole end of the story, and it's giving them a reason for their journey, and now they've reached it. It's all my mind's got blank. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, come back. I've gone blank. Yeah.
Been a long day.
Oh, yeah. No, I had it in my head. Then it's just gone.
Did you want to weigh in?
What was the question? I just completely zoned out.
There must be something in the air today, I think.
I think it was.
No, I was saying about like a lot of the kind of discussion that's immediately.
Oh, the trolley problem.
Yeah, essentially, because that's what everyone kind of defaults to when they talk about this.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it was anything to do with that. I think it was about human beings after an apocalypse. It was about what people would be prepared to do, how far they'd be prepared to push things, and I don't think it was specifically about the trolley problem. Because otherwise it would have been the whole thing all the way through, wouldn't it? But we know that had it been the trolley problem, had it been about that, we'd have known that Ellie would have to die to do it right from the beginning, and we didn't. We even had like the misdirection of, is it her blood, when she smeared her blood over Sam.
Yeah.
So, no.
Abby?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it last episode or the episode before, of this kind of world and existence. Like, you do what you can to survive. You know, I don't think anyone's necessarily the good or the bad guy. It's just you do, you know, you look after number one, and number one is you and your people. And I don't think, even if, you know, they had opened up Ellie's brain and pulled out a miraculous vaccine, how do they get that to everyone? How do they distribute that? How do they then go back to a normal society? You can't go back to a normal society, you know? Because then you look at places like Jackson and that are just fully functional. It's yeah, it's really difficult, because I don't think, the question of the trolley of, you know, do you save one life or save humanity? At that point, I don't think there is a saving humanity answer. Society, there isn't a society. Everyone's doing what they can to survive, and almost feels like the Fireflies' way of looking for a cure feels outdated. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't think it's the main theme. The main theme is, doing what you can to survive, and then that cycle of violence and what that leads to.
I mean, and that question of how far you go for someone you love and what things you'll do, even, I think Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann have talked about this particular point a lot, about how love and doing anything for love can manifest in really terrible ways as well as really beautiful ways. And that's kind of been this overarching theme in there. And I think, I mean, the reason I wanted to mention it, because like this seems to be like absolutely dominates discussion online and stuff, is between whether Joel was right or whether he doomed humanity. And it's like, I don't think he doomed humanity, because like we've discussed all the possible logistical problems and everything else. But even if you absolutely could guarantee 100% that they'd make a cure, and then they'd be able to get that cure out, and like no one else would ever get infected again, even in that situation, he was absolutely 100% right to do exactly what he did, because they were taking a 14-year-old girl who'd already suffered loads of trauma, and they were basically killing her without telling her or giving her a chance to consent to that. If she even, if it's even right to ask someone that age to consent to something like that, put that on their shoulders. So there's that anyway, but it's also, if you look at, and I won't go into spoilers with it here, but part 2 and kind of obviously deals with the consequences of part 1 and what happens at the end. But those consequences aren't to do with the fact that we don't have a cure anymore. Those consequences are to do with the fact that people are dead and the fact that Joel lied. They're far more important. That the vaccine and the immunity pretty much take a complete, back step for that. They're not the point, and if they were the point, then that would have been the whole thing in part 2. And I don't even think if we get a part 3, that'll come back in the way that a lot of people might expect it to, where all of a sudden it, like, I've seen a lot of like takes where people think that Ellie should do this grand noble sacrifice at the end of part 3 to sacrifice herself for a cure, and I think if they do that, that will be the absolute worst cop-out story ending ever. So
Definitely.
Why would she? You know, what gain does Ellie get from saving humanity? Because, you know, it's just, yeah.
Exactly. And that's even if it does work. Like, that's the whole thing of it. It's not definite. If it was an absolute definite, right, the cure is an Ellie, we need it, then obviously Joel did the complete wrong thing. But it was not a definite thing, and it's still, they could open her up and there's just nothing there. So I think, Joel's in the right. Like, he wanted to save Ellie, and obviously, like, the Fireflies at that point were the bad guys. So he was doing the right thing.
Because he was like, she was prepped for surgery pretty quick, wasn't she?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Far
no
too quick.
tests, no,
No.
like X-rays and shit. None of this.
Let's
No
not try the
CT.
blood first. Let's not try getting bone marrow and all that sort of stuff. Like, no, straight in. Whip it out.
Surgery.
she doesn't know, so she won't feel any pain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. I think the only thing that you can survive in this new world is just how far can you be away from other people? Like that couple that were in the cabin, completely untouched, living their life as normal. And like, if you think of the world, like, could it have survived the really cold conditions of like Antarctica and stuff like that? Have they been touched by it?
Yeah.
It brings all that thoughts up. So all you can think of is that somewhere in the world there'll be people that are so distant, like tribes in the Amazon. Are they touched by it? That's the way I think. It's just there will be people living their life on somewhere, and it's not my decision to decide on whether I save it or not. Life always finds a way, and there you go.
Oh, I quoted Dr. Ian Malcolm in my dissertation.
Amazing.
I actually did.
Yeah.
I referred to him as our esteemed colleague.
Very nice. But yeah, that's it. It's not anyone's choice to make that decision, I think. So yeah, good on Joel.
It's that interesting thing. Like, I only really have that opinion after the show. In the game, more so, I'm like, Ellie should have had the choice, but then that's not necessarily Joel's issue. That's the issue of the Fireflies and them being like, look, here is this situation. Because if that was presented to Ellie, I think Ellie would have been like, yeah, you know, do it, do what you can.
Yeah.
So it's the thing of like, oh, was Joel right or wrong? Joel was right for his own personal circumstance. Like, yeah.
I mean, I'll go back to Ian Malcolm and say they were so consumed with whether they could. They didn't stop to think whether they should.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, as you say, I think there's not really much doubt in world or out, like, that Ellie would say yes if she was presented with that choice in there. But the reason she would say yes isn't because she's, you know, making the grand noble sacrifice. It's because she's got survivor's guilt. She says this explicitly at the end. She says she's waiting for her turn after, you know, Riley, Tess, Sam, and it's, you know, she's basically, the fact that she survived and all these other people have died along the way is kind of weighing on us heavily. And then that's something that we see kind of continue, again, without giving any plot details away. That's something which heavily drives what she does in part 2 as well, is that, again, loss, and she's survived. And the idea that the natural conclusion to that is that she kind of lets her survivor's guilt take her to her death, is, I think that's not a character arc. That's a surrender. That's kind of the opposite way. And that's sort of, again, she's at odds with Joel. Joel's on the other end of that, where he tried to off himself after loss, and then he couldn't, and then now he's just kept going, like, kind of almost automatically, and now he's got a reason to actually live again, and found something to actually genuinely fight for, and he doesn't want to lose again. So that's what drives him kind of onward.
I think as well though that if she'd had the choice, he probably would have talked her out of it. He would have told her, "You live, you find something to live for, and you fight," which he said all the way through to her. It's not like
Yeah.
she knows that's what he would say, and she might say, "Oh no, I need to do this because after everything I've done, it can't be for nothing." He would then say to her, "It's not for nothing. You find something and you fight for it and you live." So I don't know. I think had she had the choice, that Joel would have talked her out of it.
Yeah, I think she's been that relationship between her and Joel. She's found her forever person, I think.
Yeah.
And she says like she's got that reason now to not go. So she will fight the same as Joel to keep them together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that point, given again, I think this is far more relevant than the actual decision to kill everyone in the Firefly Hospital and rescue Ellie. But afterwards, Joel obviously doesn't tell her what has happened. He lies. I think the lie is slightly better constructed in the show because he mentions raiders rather than just claiming that they left. But I mean, how do we feel about that? And also, I think the other question is, why do we think he made the choice to lie rather than tell her the truth at that point, and for as long as he did? So I'm going to pick on Abby this time to go first.
I mean, first and foremost, one little detail about that scene I feel like I have to just bring up is the fact that like Ellie's first comment is, "Where are my clothes?" And after obviously her whole experience in the last episode, that like broke my heart a little bit. I was like, "Oh, baby girl, baby girl." But really difficult because it feels like such a stretch, Joel's lie, you know, like to add on that bit of like, "Oh, raiders came and they killed everyone." Like, to me, Ellie already knows that Joel's lying about that. Like, she's not stupid. She's not stupid at all. So I think she already knows that Joel's lying about that because it's such like a desperate attempt for Joel to kind of justify what's happened. But yeah, I don't think there's any way that he could have been like, or is there, of him being like, "They were gonna kill you. They were going to kill you and there was no promise it was going to work," you know? How would have Ellie reacted to that? I don't really have an answer for that. I don't have an answer for it. I don't have an answer whether him lying was good or bad. I just keep circling back to my point of like, you do what you can to survive and you do what you can to, you know, justify what you do.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he was he was protecting her, or he thought he was protecting her by telling her the lie, or was he protecting himself, or a bit of both?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was more so he was protecting himself over her because he didn't want her to think of him like that, which I think then could come into play a lot later of Ellie's view of Joel, of like, "You should have just fucking told me. You should have just told me that, you know, what you did. Because I knew anyway," like that kind of thing. Don't know.
Yeah, I think it would have risked how she reacted. She might have rejected Joel and sort of gone the opposite way. And I don't think Joel was ready for that. I think he's at a point now where I think if he lost Ellie, he probably would just go. I don't think he'd find a way. I think it's Ellie or nothing at this point. And he's gone with, he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't. So he's gone the easier route and gone with the lie. But the whole body language of her turning over at the back of the car clearly shows that she's seen right through him.
Yeah, it was so transparent, wasn't it? And then he was just trying to fill silences so she didn't have time to think about how transparent it was.
Yeah.
And she was like withdrawn and thinking, and he knew that. He knew that she was like, "This is just such bullshit." because it all just seemed too like, where are my clothes? Well, I only just got you out of there.
Yeah.
The raiders came and killed everyone. Oh, is that right? Okay. and yeah, I felt the same as you, Abby, when she woke up without her clothes and wearing my clothes. She was just so vulnerable
Yeah.
in that moment, because there is a vulnerability about going under general anesthetic, because people could be doing what the fuck they like.
Mm.
Especially
And
when she doesn't know any of them, well, apart from
exactly.
Marlene. But
Yeah.
I think it's that thing of like Ellie, bless her, like everyone else makes decisions for her. She
Yeah.
just doesn't have a say in anything that happens to her.
No.
She gets sent to Fedra school. It's up to Fedra to send her on sewer duty or being like a high up sergeant.
Mhm.
Riley's leaving. Riley tells Ellie, I'm leaving. You can't come with me. The whole thing with David. David's like, you're going to be my equal. You're with me. And then obviously
She
that
get
comes
a
in.
choice between Tommy and Joel, didn't she? Which one do you want? Right, let's go.
Yeah. So it's really sad. Like Ellie is a really sad character. She's just
Yeah.
constantly, just everything is not in her control. Like nothing's in her control. And it's just really sad to see that and just see how it breaks her down slowly.
There was a line at the poetry slam this weekend that was I'm treated like a child and touched like an adult, and I think that
Yeah.
it was like, it really resonated on the Monday when we got back. I was like, they're treating her like a child when it suits them, treating her like an adult when it suits them, also preempting what they think she thinks when it suits them, and none of it really, apart from that one choice she has, Joel or Tommy, suits her. So yeah, it's sad.
Yeah. And then obviously Joel swears and we cut to black, and that's the end of the whole season. But
Which
I
we
mean,
just sat there then like, is there post-scene credits? Because I was rooting for us, Abby. I was rooting for us in that last scene.
Well, you never know. We might have seen a certain character anyway during
Yeah,
the hospital scene.
you might have done.
yeah, it was the one person you see very briefly running away, right?
There's one person that does, apart from obviously the nurses in the room, there's one person that doesn't get shot by Joel. That person is in silhouette. We don't see their face, and we focus on them running away, and you see them running towards the camera past it. And the braid and the hat and the fact that they have the exact same backpack that a certain pivotal character in The Last of Us 2 has. I think it was very clever because it's almost how they did Dina. We don't know if we're going to get a season 2, but if we do, we've already sort of planted these seeds.
Yeah, because then it'd be quite easy for them to film the other side of that and show other
That character
things.
in light then running away.
Okay, I mean, I am quite eager to get on and talk about that, but before we do, I want to make sure we kind of exhausted everything about the actual episode and what happened. So I suppose we've talked about, it's obviously the Anna, the immunity, the whole opening thing, Joel's choice, and where his kind of motivation stem from, and Marlene's and Ellie, which is kind of everything pivotal in the center of that. And we've talked about the giraffes, both in terms of how poignant that scene was and how giraffes just don't look real. But is there anything else we want to kind of draw out from there that we haven't talked about? Does anyone, anything that we've not mentioned, or any more points that anyone hasn't had the chance to bring up?
There's a funny Easter egg in that giraffe scene. I don't know if you saw on Twitter. The one of the VFX artists for the game, on the baseball sign in the background, I think the name of it's like Bethany Crane Park or something. And he put it in the game and he blurred it out just enough so no one would see it, but it's actually his wife's name. And in the TV show, they've left it in Bethany Crane Park, but it's in full. You can see the name. So even though it's never meant to be in the game, it's found its way into the TV show and no one's picked it up.
Saw
I love
that.
that.
That's
like-
so funny.
I love in the game when you're going around, you find like the pet shops that have all photos of pets inside, and it's all actual photos of like the Naughty Dog staff's pets. I love little bits like that. That's
Yeah.
so cool. No, I have nothing more to say really that we haven't already talked about. I loved the whole scene with Joel and Ellie sitting down and Joel opening up to Ellie and being really open with her, and it again explaining more so why he's deaf in that ear, because it was that kind of like added another layer of oh Joel. No, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really solid end, and they did the best job they could have done in following the game exactly. Because they could have gone one of two ways. They could have like followed the game really closely or like really strayed from it. So I think they had a really nice middle ground leaning towards obviously just following the game.
I don't know what we're going to do on Mondays now. It's become like part of the Dickens household Monday routine. Phil gets home from uni. I set it all up. He goes to the loo, gets changed, sits down, ready, go. It's like, I don't know what we're going to do on Mondays. I'm going to find something else to watch.
Just put the Mandalorian on.
Again.
Honestly, like, this is exactly what I said we should do. We should sit. In fact, I might do it. I've got a mate coming to keep me company while Phil goes to WASD, and we might actually just sit and watch them back to back with pizza and tissues.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you're always welcome to pick up the controller and continue and finish your playthrough.
It's not for me, okay? I will say this now. I tried. It is not for me. I am an Animal Crossing, Thomas was alone, Little Nightmares type of girl, and it's not for me. And it's not the mechanics, because they sorted out the accessibility, so I don't feel sick when I play, because I get really seasick. And there are some games like when the PlayStation 3 first came out, and there was a game that used the 6-axis called Flower, and it was good and so beautiful, and I threw up and I was ill. It was really not fun. I was like, I can't even bloody play this. But with The Last of Us, it's managed to get away from that. I don't feel sick playing it, which is great, but it's not for me. I prefer to just watch you play it and shout, look, there's one over there.
Watch me get stressed out rather than you get stressed out yourself.
I mean, I didn't say it like that. That's your words, not mine. But yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned pre-stream to the two Resident Evil nerds that I tried playing Resident Evil 2 for the first time, and 2? Is it 2?
4.
Or is it 4? 2 plus 2. I tried playing the demo and I just can't. The Last of Us is the extent of horror game I can do. I can't do it. It freaks me out too much. I tried playing Alan Wake back in the day and I tapped out after like half an hour. And I couldn't get out of the basement in the Resi demo, so
I like watching Phil play stuff, and then I cosplay the characters. Like I did the Tracys from Detroit Become Human. That was fun. I've done Lady Dimitrescu from Resident Evil and Bella, which was fun. Like, it's really fun. Just like getting, and this was during lockdown, so I wasn't going anywhere. It was just for the lols. But yeah, you play them. I'll cosplay them. It will be fine.
Yeah. So, and also just on the Resident Evil 4 points, what you're trying to tell us, Abby, is that us putting you in the VR version of that game would be really good entertainment when they bring it out.
Oh my god, I'd cry so much. Like VR for me is freaky enough without that.
Right.
My job, I work on a website, and one of my co-workers went to Supermassive Games the other day and played their new like VR horror game where obviously when you blink the monsters move and all of that. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I think you should have gone because you would have had stronger reactions." I was like, "Nope, no, thank you,
no."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
but not for me.
it's getting off topic, but I think if I ever get to end up with a VR headset, I think that's going to be interesting time with.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just before we move on to season 2, part 2, and all that sort of stuff, just I think to mention and kind of round out The Last of Us now. This episode we've mentioned now the viewership has gone up pretty much every single episode. This one had 8.2 million people watching the finale, which is 74.5% more than the premiere. And then the viewership for the full season is like 30.4 million viewers, which is more than House of the Dragon, which was 29 million. And then I think that's the biggest they've had since the last season of Game of Thrones, which is like the only thing that's gone bigger. So this is huge now, and I think it's also it's good in a way because I like, but it's also a weird thing. Like now, far more people have seen the show than will have played the game, and particularly played the game to the fullest.
But that's funny because my mate D, when Joel got stabbed, was like, if he dies, I'll not be happy. I'll be very cross. And I'm sat there going, oh, babe. But it's really funny because watching somebody watch it who had never seen the games was hilarious. Oh, we better not die. All right. Not
Do
yet.
you like golf?
Oh. Well, on that note, I think
Yeah.
let's talk about the potential of season 2, and obviously this involves talking about The Last of Us Part 2. So anyone who has watched the first season of the show and nothing else, there's spoilers ahead for Last of Us Part 2 and therefore potentially for season 2 and 3, maybe more. So if you want to skip that, then check the timestamps in the descriptions and skip ahead, because we will be really talking about whatever we want and everything that happens that you may not have seen yet. This has been your warning. So just kind of give context of what we know, and there's not very much of it, but we know that the next season will be The Last of Us adaptation of The Last of Us Part 2. They're not going to kind of fill out the space with like filler material. They're going to adapt straight from the games, they've said. And they've said it's going to be at least 2 seasons. They've said there'll be more than one, but they haven't said how many.
You know why? That's because they didn't need the whole section, and I say this a lot, after the cutscene with Ellie and Dina and the baby. Should have ended it there.
Well, blame Tommy and PTSD for that one.
Yeah.
Bloody unkillable Tommy. That man should have died about 10 times.
Right. Kill him properly. I mean, is it bad to say I'm not actually a fan of Tommy?
I'm a fan of Tommy in the first game, but by the end of the second game, his morals just completely go. You know, he's just willing to put Ellie in any kind of danger, and it's just again Ellie being used for other people's gain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to talk about that. Actually, I think that's worth talking about, because we know, like from the show now, that Tommy by season 2 will be a father, where he wasn't in the games, and so that obviously changes things. So, I mean, what do we want to just kind of dive in and start talking about theories and thoughts on any and everything? Anyone got any thoughts on Tommy while we're here and what this could mean?
I think Tommy's got a nerve, really. Like, he has. Like, he points Ellie and goes bang. It's like, if you want to do this, you do it. You should know how important family is. You know. I mean, he's about to become a father himself. Dina and Ellie are parents themselves, with the little cutie baby with the big chubbers. And he's got a nerve. He's like, oh, we should go and do this. Funny enough, Tommy, in season 1, you buggered off and ignored Joel. like left the radio just because it suited you better to be in Jackson. And actually, no, it's just my brother. Sod him. I'm not allowed to be in touch. That's fine, right? And now suddenly he's all like, "No, we got to avenge Joel." Like, oh, bugger off. You do it then.
I mean, the context of the last episode and obviously Joel saying that he tried to kill himself adds a lot more weight to the fact Tommy like really had a go at Joel in that episode in Jackson.
Yeah.
The fact he was like, just because your life ended and, I'm going to be a father, it just added a lot more suddenly weight to the fact that he knew how fragile Joel was. But yeah, it's going to add a lot more stakes to it. Obviously, as soon as anything happens to Joel or Ellie and they go missing, obviously Tommy can't just kind of go out and find them as easily because Maria's going to be a lot more, we've got a baby.
Right.
Well, he snuck so in the game he snuck out because he was kind of trying to talk Ellie out of this and giving all these reasons why it'd be daft to go off to Seattle and try and do this and talk her, and she's like, what are you doing? So he kind of goes ahead and then leaves a note and says to Maria essentially, "I'm sorry, I have to do this. Stop Ellie from going, lock her up." And then obviously Maria turns around and goes, "No, I'm going to let you go because you want to do this, but you're going to rescue my husband and bring him back alive." And then by the end, obviously that journey twists him enough and he gets a bullet that comes even closer than Joel's to killing him, leaving him blind in one eye and a limp. And he's obviously a lot more bitter person. And all of a sudden, he's no longer trying to protect her from the revenge. He's trying to push her and go, "No, well, I found where she is. Go. I can't go. You've got to go." And that's, yeah. If we add a baby into that mix, that adds a whole new weight to first of all, what he's trying to sacrifice to save her in the first place and what he's leaving behind. And
well,
then
it's going to be the first time we're seeing a child in the Last of Us universe raised by two parents that are still alive. Isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's always been one parent's been dead or they've got no parents. So it's going to be the first time seeing how two parents work together or even against each other when there's a child in the mix.
Oh god, they're going to
Yeah.
make that extra tragic just to because it's a
100%.
unique case.
Yeah.
I don't know that they will, though.
No?
I think Maria's just so no nonsense. She's like, this is happening. Yeah, whatever, we're doing this. I don't know that they would have to bring in an extra tragedy with the child. I think Maria would say, "You've got a family here," and he'll go say something like, "Joe was my family, I gotta go." And that'll be. But apart from anything else, the fact that they are in a commune and are hence communists, which still makes me laugh because I can hear the sound of 100 people going woke, 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 woke. That, do you know what I mean? But the fact that they are commune, I reckon that there'll be somebody who's looking after all the kids while Maria's out at work anyway, because she runs the place. So I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. I don't think there'll be that much weight on the fact that he's now a father, because it's not like Maria's going to give up work, is it?
Yeah, no, but when he leaves for Seattle, essentially to try and protect his surrogate niece from doing the same and going down a bad path,
No, it's still not.
in doing so, he's leaving a baby behind who's communal child rearing or not. They're still my dad's gone off potentially to his death in a distant.
Babe, just say you're the product of two loving parents who are still married and move on. Because
This is not about me.
The whole idea that men would go, "No, I've got a child, I'm not going off to sudden death," is just.
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about more the kind of if he's left them behind, what they have to kind of, the kind of anguish that she's going through, worrying that the person she loves, who's the father of the child, is going to die, in pursuing this fool's errand, essentially, as they see it. And
I mean, I'm not saying she's not going to be pissed off at him, but I just don't see that having a baby is going to add that much weight to it. I might be wrong.
It's going to add another layer to Ellie, isn't it? Because Ellie's
Oh,
going
to Ellie, yeah.
Ellie's going to witness the baby being born and growing up and seeing that child be loved, and we don't know how that's going to affect Joel in seeing a child, growing up again.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to have weight with Ellie and with Joel and with everybody else. I just don't see that it's going to have that much weight on Tommy. Not where
Yeah,
it comes
about
to
the
his
child.
decisions. Yeah. He'd be like, no, my brother comes first. The main question for me for season 2 is, will we finally find out what Joel had to do to get the coffee?
I want to know this.
Right. Every time Neil Druckmann's on Twitter, I tweet him and ask him. He's not yet replied.
I'm surprised he's
Rude.
not blocked you yet.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I guess like we have a different kind of take on that. I do think they made that decision for a reason. So it will be interesting to see how they play it.
Yeah.
If nothing else. But in terms of, I mean, changes, I suppose, are the big thing that we probably want to talk about, aren't they? Because like there'll be changes just because of the pacing of a TV show, and they'll do things differently because it won't be kind of, they won't do one season from Ellie's point of view and then another season from Ellie's point of view, because without having to do that to make sure a gamer remains immersed, there's no point doing that. They can just flip back and forth. So we'll probably see more of Abby sooner and kind of realize why. I think we'll pretty much if they don't episode 1 or the very early on, like reveal that she's the daughter of the surgeon, because there's no point keeping that a secret at this point. I think without doing some like weird subterfuge that wouldn't work, it'd fall apart pretty quickly. But one thing that Neil Druckmann has said is that he won't change the story purely to appease people who were critical of the game. So that's the first thing we know. Well, that was going to be my next question: is what do we think about that part of it?
Good. Fan service, changing things to appease people. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I offer in evidence Game of Thrones season 8, the end. Right, Clegane Bowl and all that bollocks. It was rubbish. We knew it would be rubbish. It appeased the fans. It was crap. I think Craig and Neil are telling a story and they're telling it well. Let them do what they do.
Yeah. They've changed what they needed to change to make it flow better, and then they've added extra. They've not taken away. And I think that's what works best, definitely.
Yeah. I think as well, if you try and retcon a story after the fact on the basis that some people don't like it, and especially on the basis that like the most toxic possible subset of people don't like it, then you get the rise of Skywalker, essentially. Somehow Palpatine returned, and I don't want that for The Last of Us.
No.
I mean, sure, it's not everyone's cup of tea what happens in the story, but that's their story. They should tell that story.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I mean, what do we think as far as things will change in terms of for the pacing or the structure and fitting with the TV show format? Is there anything we've got any thoughts on as far as that goes?
when Joel meets Abby.
I think they'll change how Abby meets them. I think it's just too convenient in the game. And as someone that loves The Last of Us Part 2, I think there are things that could have been done very differently that would have been more impactful when it comes to Abby's character. But considering they're going to be following it for the most part, I think they're going to change how Abby comes into play and how she meets Joel and Tommy, because otherwise it's just going to be too sudden for a TV show.
I think that moment where like he rescues her and it's all like really hectic and they've got the infected pressing up against the fence, which is terrifying. Then they get out of that, and then there's that moment when Abby realizes who he is, who Joel and Tommy are. And I think if that comes too quickly after that beat, then it's just going to feel a bit jumbled. So I agree. I think they'll bring Abby in a slightly different way. Don't know what that is, but I agree.
Yeah, I think it's mainly because they kind of meet because she walks in a random direction through the snow and then happens to be where they are, which is essentially the same way that Marlene found Joel and Tess in the first game, was because like they killed Robert and she was just like right there. Whereas they kind of changed it so it made more sense that they knew where Robert was, and then he said, "Oh, it's the Fireflies," and then they go specifically to seek out the Fireflies, and that's how they interact. So it makes more sense in a non-game environment. So we might see more of that where they actually plan it out rather than kind of Abby storms off in the snow and happens to, be headed by a horde into the right place, which is cool as a gameplay thing. But
Yeah.
I always liked the idea of Abby coming into Jackson and gaining trust, and then obviously things going shit tits up. I always like that idea, because then it just adds more impact. And again, if she came in, befriended Ellie, and then obviously Ellie realizes that she was only befriending her to get to Joel.
That would add a whole new level of angry.
Oh god, yeah.
And it justifies a lot more of that hunting Abby down, and then again adds to that impact. I don't know though. I'm not a game writer. I'm not a story writer, so
I don't know. I beg to differ with what you just come up with. I mean, can I just add, like, if we're brainstorming here, Abby walks into Jackson with a jar of Nescafe. She's heard about Joel.
Anybody know Joel Miller?
Right? But yeah, I like that idea as well, because it would add a whole nother level of why Ellie would then go after Abby even harder.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of beats I kind of like, but I think one of the things that would be quite cool to do is, obviously, like I say, they're not going to save the reveal for halfway through that Jerry is Abby's dad. But I think if we have that first episode and like we meet Abby and she kind of gets close to Joel, then they show it like before he dies, but after she's introduced, and we then just like get this kind of, I don't know whether it'd be like an end scene just before the credits or one of those cold open type things. But either way, we kind of see, she comes in his body and then that transition, obviously not to over Joel's body like we saw in her side of the game, but in like sort of transition to where she's just watching him from across the room in Jackson or something like that. Something like that would be like, that would be the moment the audience kind of goes, "Oh shit, that's..."
What a lovely mirroring though from that little boy who walked in. There's that little boy who walked into the QZ. Having Abby walk in would be a lovely mirror.
If I remember, there's concept art of Abby in Jackson. Just gonna put out my trusty concept art book. If I remember, there's concept art where Abby is in Jackson, like at the bar with them. I remember seeing it, like, that would have been so cool. Probably not gonna be able to find it now, but yeah. I'd love that.
I've not. I don't know whether I've seen the art or not, but I knew this was a thing that they were originally toying with doing. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, there is. I'm looking at it now on the interwebs.
Yeah, it's interesting. They could really go in different ways with it.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see what they do change.
Yeah, I think did he mention as well that there'll be episodes similar to like the Bill and Frank one, where we'll get like sort of little stories throughout. So I think we probably will see stuff that we've not seen before in the games. I think there'll be more added to change the pace, I think, to potentially keep Pedro Pascal in the series a bit more. So it's not just straight away he goes.
You got to keep the thirsty Pedro fan.
Exactly. You can't just... Well, I suppose it would be it'd be quite a decisive action, I think, to do it straight away or early in the season.
Real.
Yeah. I think the fans would kick off, the ones that don't know what's coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm of the view that they should do it pretty soon, like at 1 or 2, like purely because it's like essentially the inciting incident of that whole story. Like the longer they wait, the more kind of stuff that's not the plot they have to do.
I think 2 episodes we're going to get with Joel.
Mm.
Like 2 main episodes before, and then we'll get some more flashback stuff later. But I think Pedro's going to survive 2 episodes, and then that's going to happen.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Joel,
Pedro,
come on, baby.
Pedro eres muerte.
So, I mean, on that point, because I've seen a few people saying that it'll be the same as what happened with The Walking Dead when Negan came in and like battered Glenn and whatever the other guy's name was. He also battered to death in that episode. I can't remember.
Ginger bloke with the beard, the flat top.
That's the one.
Is it Abram?
Yeah,
That was
Abram. That's it.
Abram, yeah, Abram. That's it.
So, like that kind of, there was almost an instant drop off of viewers from The Walking Dead, like pretty much straight away. Like tons and tons of people left. But on the other hand, this is HBO, and HBO's got House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, and they kill off major characters on the regular. So what do we think as far as, do we think which way will it go with this? Do we think it'll be something that there'll be lots of outrage, other than people who are already outraged and have been outraged for like the last 3 years? Will there be new outrage, or will people keep watching, do we think?
It's a difficult one, because with The Walking Dead, what happens to Glenn and Abram happens in the story. So they are fan characters, but I think if they're wanting to follow their story that is in the comic, they shouldn't change that. And I think it's the same for trying to change the TV series. They're not going to change what happens to Joel just to appease the fans. So I think, I think you will. I think it's just one of those things. They're going to have to take the hit that when Joel dies, they are going to get a hit of people not watching.
Honestly, I think they've built up such a bond between Joel and Ellie that when Joel dies, people are going to stay to see what she does.
Oh, exactly. I think the hatred is what's going to keep them coming back.
Yeah.
It's literally like, I need to see you die. You are not surviving this. And but yeah, I think what ultimately did kill like The Walking Dead was obviously having Rick disappear. Which, if they try and change the story some way, I think it'll make the show end. I think like that viewership will just be killed. So I think it does have to. They have to. It's a hard one to like mainly appease the game fans to keep them in watching the show. But no, I think what they've done is that they take careful consideration to every second that's shown on the TV show, and I don't think they would do something stupid. Everything is meticulously thought out, and I don't think they'll make a mistake.
No.
The only loss to viewership will be people just don't like how the story's gone, and that's it.
Yeah, I think there was that thing as well with The Walking Dead. They proper milked that moment. Like that was drawn out so much over that episode and over the episode before, and with the fake out Glenn death like 3 episodes before or whatever it was. No,
it was Carl that died. That was it. Carl died. That's what killed it. Because that's where I stopped. I was like, as soon as, because I'm a big fan, I collect the comic books, and the moment that Carl died, I was out. I was like, no.
But they did it like a shrine. Like
exactly.
Everybody had to witness his death. I stopped watching. I made it through the like communication through interpretive dance of the junkyard people. And I made it through that somehow. But then when Rick went off in a helicopter, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. This is ridiculous.
No.
But Carl dying with a whole shrine of people worshipping him, going, "Oh, Carl, you're dying." I was really?
Yeah.
Really? Just shoot him and be done. Just shoot him seems to be something I'm saying a lot.
Yeah.
I never got past season 3 of Walking Dead, so
I did notice you kind of inquisitive looked at it, like, what have I missed in this show?
I don't want to know.
No.
3 seasons was enough for me.
Yeah. If you want to know how to kill a TV series.
And then stop. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any risk of them doing that. There's not going to be any interpretive dance on Last of Us or...
a musical episode.
Yeah, and as long
I would like to see that. That would be quite funny.
Well, I mean, there is the musical alternative ending to the first game, which they recorded, which sadly I wanted that to be an Easter egg in the remake where they kind of attached that mocap to the character models, so we saw it kind of as an unlockable thing, but they never did, which is a shame.
I can just imagine the Joel theme being played out as a musical. I think that'd be quite good. It's like that. And the whole dancing, No, please don't do that.
I'm just thinking of that scene now in Shaun of the Dead where they whack the zombie with golf club, snooker cues to "Don't Stop Me Now."
Yeah. See, it's perfect.
I'd love.
Yeah, they need to do that.
I'd love to do a Shaun of the Dead parody with Last of Us. It would be great.
So funny, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I'm not sure how the world is ready for such a thing.
The scary thing is, as a cosplayer with lots of Last of Us cosplayers on my list, I could probably make that happen. maybe one day. Join the Spores Productions Patreon to make that happen.
Yes, do it.
Lord, no. Carry on.
I can't stop thinking of it now. God, what's his name? Carlos, the one who just shags about doing a little tap dance. Sorry.
Way off topic. I can't remember what the original statement was.
Yeah, I think
about killing Joel. I think.
Yeah, we've done a lot of kind of. I don't know whether this is just the sign of how far the story and like the series has kind of worn our brains out, so we just kind of fatigue and or whether we've just all had a bit of a week. But either way,
bit of both. Emotional damage and just real life.
Looking forward to seeing the turning the fucking frogs gay brigade losing their shit where it comes to Dina and Ellie.
I can't believe they made Ellie a lesbian. It's like, but
if they, and the thing that they will really, really, really lose their shit over is Dina being a brown Jew, brown and Jewish. They're just gonna just lose their shit, and I'm here for it. I'm readying the memes.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things that we can like imagine. Like there'll be a controversy every single week as soon as there's a trans kid escaping from like a religious cult. Then they'll be up in arms about that because it's I'm surprised there wasn't more kick-off about David being Christian.
They were too busy trying to take rights away from women to notice, I think. But do we think Ian Alexander, is Ian Alexander his name?
Yeah.
He's going to be playing Lev again. Do we know?
I'd love that.
Me too.
Everyone's like, oh, but Ian's too old. But I don't think they are. Like, I look at them and I think they're like the same age as Bella.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of years older.
And they still look really young.
Yeah.
Oh God, can you imagine a whole non-binary cast? They would lose their make it happen.
Yeah, because Victoria Grace, who plays Yara, has said that she'd want to reprise that role as well. Although, if she could like not die this time, I think that would be good on the basis of. I mean, I was kind of miffed that she died, especially after I went through like the most horrific and nerve-wracking section of gameplay in the entire game to get her the things she needed for her surgery, and then she just went and died, which I thought was quite selfish afterwards.
Very rude.
But also, like, there needs to be Abby and Lev kind of have a happy ending until the Rattlers happen, but there needs to be more. I think they're just killing absolutely everyone off. Probably they could like rate it in a bit. It's not.
Abby and Lev's spin-off where they start an amateur dramatics and do Pirates of Penzance playing all the characters. No? All right. Back to the
Maybe somewhere out there it exists. I don't know.
In an alternate universe, if we're taking string theory, that happens.
Okay. Let's try.
Sounded on a weird
I'm
note.
trying desperately to like cling onto a thread of something that we were going to like sort of specific questions, but I think we've lost that track quite a lot. So
We've lost the plot.
and it's entirely my fault. I'm the one hosting this, so I've only got myself to blame.
Like herding cats.
Okay, I mean there are two specific points I want to kind of cover. One of
Okay,
which
serious face.
is the that doesn't help. But we've apparently we're going to see a lot more infected in the next season than we have in this one, which I think they've said because obviously it was a big budget show anyway, but they've got more money next season to do more, so they can do things like with this. They show more off about what the tendrils do and all that sort of stuff, and possibly also introduce the spores that we never really saw. So, as well as other varieties and mutations of infected that we may be familiar with from the games as well, from part 2. So, how do we feel about this? Is this something that we'd be quite looking forward to?
Yeah, I felt like it was a real shame that we didn't see more infected. Again, I don't know if it would have worked if they had more infected in it. But I would be really, really like excited to see more infected in, because they set, thinking back to that first episode where we see the first lot of infected, I remember thinking,
Oh gosh, yeah.
this is going to be so cool.
Mm.
And then we just don't really get it. We don't really get the threat of them. And, you know, in the end, they're not the main threat in this universe. It's all the other people that are smart. But I feel like that's almost where we lost out a little bit on Joel and Ellie's relationship strengthening, because we didn't see how they dealt with that kind of situation together. So if we get to see more infected, and the whole changing from spores to tendrils was such an interesting dynamic that I think it's a real shame we didn't get to explore that more. So I hope we see that.
Yeah.
2 words: Rat King.
Do we think that's doable, practical, or will that have to be entirely CGI, or they just like tape like several people together?
That's how they
think
did
it'll
the
be-
original mocap.
Yeah. Well, it could be like a human pyramid, so I think it'll be doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
I,
not.
I agree, though. I want to see more infected this
Yeah.
time. I think it was right because it laid the basis of the series being about the humans being the biggest threat. But they are still around. I found the most interesting shot I found of all the infected was not even when they were swarming out the hole with the bloater. It was when they were up on that, I think they were up on a roof or a level up somewhere, and they were all in the square and they were just stood doing nothing and crying.
Yeah.
Thought that was horrific. I loved it.
Yeah. No, I think then he also mentioned that there might be potential for new infected as well,
Yeah,
because I've read that somewhere.
they did say this season they were going to show like a type of infected that we'd not seen in the games, which, unless they were talking about the children, like the
I think,
child,
yeah.
I don't remember seeing anything new, really. They were just kind of general infected. But I'm not 100% sure on
Yeah.
that.
But I'd love to see more done with the tendrils and see how like a sort of like a hub sort of tendril where you see them going into it potentially, and
Like nests.
Yeah.
Almost a bit Days Gone, where you've got the nest.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be quite interesting to see that.
Because we saw the beginning of the potential of that in the museum with Tess, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that whole "kiss me with your tendrils" moment. That was,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had worse. Not you, babe, but I've had
I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah. But so we started to get an idea of that potential, and the idea of like when they were stepping very carefully, because if they stepped on the tendril, then they would all know.
Mhm.
And I thought I'd like to see that explored more. I think, like
Yeah.
across the countryside, maybe.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably, if we're going to say anything about the season, I think that's one of the misses, I think, is that you introduce this amazing thing, this brand new thing, and then you just leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
didn't
it's
get
just
to
like,
see it
no.
fully realised.
No. I could just imagine a really cool sequence of something working out, but
Yeah,
I think we'll probably see that in season 2.
I mean, I'm kind of interested. I think I want to see more of them in general, and I think it'd be cool to see like more bloaters and the Rat King and even a Shambler. But I think I just want them to do like there's one episode or one part of an episode where Ellie has to go through a dark office block and there's loads of kind of mold on the walls, and then the people that are in them just start popping out of it, and like they're stalking around and trying to sneak me out. If they do a stalker episode, it'll be horrifying. It'll be absolutely the worst thing ever, but it'll be fantastic.
Yeah,
because they are such absolute horrors in the games. It's just like I can't even begin to describe my loathing for stalkers. But also, that's why I want to see them on telly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that whole fight sequence with the Rat King, I think that'll be insane. If they make it, give it the space to breathe rather than overstay its welcome, which they have done with lots of things this season. I think that would be probably the best moment, I think.
I'm really, really surprised we never got the generator, like a form of the generator scene of that pure tension, or like the tension was done so well with the clicker scene. I'm just really surprised we never got another scene like that where you see how like all different kinds of infected work together.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm
I wish we
hoping-
had that.
Hi, Sanka.
I will make sure any buttholes are bled out. I'm hoping that we get.
Wonder what's inside your butthole.
I'll wait till the.
We're done with the butthole song.
Okay.
Off you go.
But yeah, I am hoping that because obviously they made a point about Joel's age and kind of him not being able to necessarily always do that until like the end and stuff like that. So I'm hoping with Ellie being younger but now grown up, so she's not a child, so she's like more capable herself. And I think if they reflect the games, she'll be like very capable anyway. And then Abby's a soldier, so they can have a lot more where we kind of see them fight the infected, because I think that's the other thing where it's cool that they're like this huge force to be reckoned with and like terrifying in that sense, but I think also having that sense of like that moment where you have to stand and fight somehow. That I think if that's done right, that'd be really cool to see. Obviously, there's always a risk it becomes kind of like a boss fighty, which is not really what you want in TV, but they could do that with a lot of like tension and like proper edgy seat moments if they do that right, and I think again that would be really cool. So I think to kind of wrap up, we went on all sorts of wild tangents all over the place, which is good, it's been good, but if you want to kind of end it with like pick one thing that is either your biggest hope for season 2 or the thing that you are most looking forward to, what would it be? So, Will?
I think it's going to be the end of Joel. I think that's going to be. I want to see how the audience takes it and see their reaction. Like the fans that are just completely new to it, have never played the games, they don't know how it is going to end. And seeing that one moment, I want to see everyone's reaction to Abby and see if it was the same with when the game came out and how they reacted to it.
Yeah, I just hope whoever's playing it that they have like there's not as unhinged a reaction as happened towards Laura. I mean, from what I've seen, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan got like people coming up and like genuinely hating him for playing Negan, and it's like, and that's going to be like 1,000-fold anyway because it's a woman, not a man. But I just hope with whoever it is spared all that nonsense.
I haven't been this excited since the Red Wedding. I mean, it's like literally. We walked out of our wedding when the bride and groom leave. We walked out to Reigns of Castamere. So this is how much of a Game of Thrones geek I am. But we got to sit then and go, people don't know, and we know, and we're going to get to do that again. And I'm really looking forward to the end of Joel because it's going to be horrendous, probably executed beautifully, and people are
Yeah.
going to go lose their fucking minds over it.
Yeah. So is that the one thing you're looking forward to as well, or is there something
Yeah, I mean,
else?
there's so much I'm looking forward to. I don't think we're ever going to know what Joel did for the coffee, but I'm looking forward to that moment as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing Ellie playing Take On Me for Dina.
Mm.
Good choice. Good
Because
choice.
Anna was giving birth to Sono when she was singing The Sun Always Shines on TV. The little musical Easter eggs that have been all the way through this have been exquisite. So I'm looking forward to more of that as well.
And what about you, Abby? What's your, if you had to pick one? I know that's tall or
I mean,
over.
just what the other two have said as well, just to expand on that. I'm really excited and nervous to see people's reactions to what happens to Joel. It's been a really weird experience walking around my office and hearing just normal people talk about The Last of Us, who you can tell don't play the games, and just hearing them talk about it, and it's like, oh, this is so bizarre. Because I have a Last of Us mug, and people just start talking to me about it, and they'll be like, oh, are you watching the show? I'm like, yeah. It's really cool. But some of my favourite moments from the season has been Bella's performance when Ellie has been in like really intense situations, you know, the bit where she gets bit and just that pure rage, and with David, like how she reacts to him. I'm really excited to see how Bella plays a broken Ellie and just see that downfall, you know, as heartbreaking it's going to be. I just can't wait to see Bella's performance of that. I just think it's going to be really, really stunning.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
I think the moments that'll shine through most. I mean, obviously there's the Joel death scene, but also like the aftermath of when she tortures Nora, and that kind of
Yeah.
when she comes back to the theater and she's trembling and like Dina's tending to the wounds because like there's the whole sort of scars all over the place, and you just see how much of a wreck she's become because of that. So that's the potential. I mean, I think it'll be really good to see, but I think in terms of, again, I'm probably looking forward to like all the moments of horror, most of like the stalkers as well. But also, if they do it in the same way and kind of like Ellie basically going in and like guerrilla warfare through Seattle and taking on the WLF and the Seraphites and everything else, then those moments like Hillcrest, like which caused me so much grief on like permadeath challenge runs, like to the point where I just ended up legging through the middle of it and hoping for the best. But like seeing that played out on screen, I think that sort of stuff will be, especially because I don't think they'll play it as like a, you know, action adventure thing. Like it'll be this fraught moment, and like as she's going through and then Jesse's going through the other end, they're probably more likely to play it as like this like on the verge of death. So I think there's going to be a lot of moments like that, which will be. It sounds wrong to say fun to watch, but fun to watch. Like as they just do this, and it's just like absolutely tense the whole time.
I think there's going to be so much tenseness and so much horror that this is why I'm looking forward to those beautiful moments of humanity, like her playing guitar, like them getting stoned together, like the whole like kiss
The
was about
snowball
a
fight with the
7.
kids.
Yeah, the kiss was a 7. Let's have a snowball fight, and yeah, those little moments of everyday humanity, I think, are what going to
Oh my god,
break
the
my heart
barn
more.
scene as well.
Yes. Oh my god. Oh,
Painful.
yeah, we don't need to wait that long. Come on, get on with
It's
it now.
only like gonna be 2 years or something.
Yeah, I'm just hoping they film the entirety of it back to back in one go, and then afterwards edit and split it up into 2 seasons so that they can go right. Season 2 will come out, and then you'll only have to wait like 6 months, and season 3.
Yeah.
I hope they film the entirety of it in South Wales. for reasons.
I mean, that would be nice, but
Yeah.
I feel like, I think they've chosen Canada because it gives them all the environments that they need for. Plus, I don't think there's anywhere in South Wales that looks like Seattle, other than the rain.
I was going to say, we've got the rain. Actually, I could do Liverpool because St John's Tower looks a bit like the Space Needle, doesn't it?
Yeah, but they're not coming over. You're not going to be able to go off to visit the set and go, hello.
I would. You don't. You're married to me, but you don't know me.
No, I know you would. I just think you're not going to be able to. That's all. I'm just preparing you now for the disappointments when that doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean, the one thing I wish I'd said before the spoiler warning, but is warn anyone who's going into season 2 blind that season 1 was the more upbeat season.
Yes.
With more happy moments, but
It all goes downhill from here.
I guess they'll find that out for themselves when they just as the soul crushing weight of the depression and the darkness and the tension and the horror rushes that. I mean, I say this, I love the story, but yeah, it's a bleak one.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Nothing bad will happen.
It will all be fine.
You just have snowball fights and pet the dog and then raise a baby in the farm and it's nothing else happens. It's
No, Ellie wakes up at the end. That's it. Done.
It was a dream all along.
It was
She
a
wakes up
dream.
in the shower.
And then her mum and dad come in.
I'm also looking forward to seeing the museum scene.
Yes.
Oh.
yes, good shout.
Yes.
So, any more we want to say about season 2 yet, or are we just is it just make it happen now already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want it, please.
Yeah. Now, please.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. You've obviously you're watching this, Craig and Neil. Get a shift on. Get it done.
And hola, Papi Pedro. Yo aprendo español para ti.
With that, so that'll be everything then for not just for this week. That's the end of it until we do some other. We do this again next season, or there's something else to podcast about. So before we go, anything you want to say in terms of things that people should look out for you, or just remind people where they can follow you and so on. So, Dee?
ducktapeanddaddyissues.blogspot.com is where my blog is. At the Ponty Poet on Twitter is where my poetry stuff is. YouTube.com D-Force Dickens is where all of it is, all my podcasts and stuff. And yeah, come find me, come be dirty, come be poetic, come just write memoirs and poetry. Either way. And if you're Pedro, just come here.
Don't you dare, Pedro. I'm watching you. Abby, what about?
Yeah, I am Opalink Cosplay on everything. I'm on the TikTok, on the Twitter, and the Instagram, and the YouTubes. You can also find me over with the team at Spores Productions, where we make cosplay content on video games and other media. And we've got lots of exciting things planned this year, including plenty of Naughty Dog content that fans will be happy with. And you can also find our Last of Us Part 2 fan film if you don't want to wait for season 2 on YouTube. It's 26 minutes long and it's free to watch, custom soundtrack and everything. And then personally, I will be at Insomnia Gaming Fest in a couple of weeks at the time of this releasing, guesting. So if you're there, come say hello. Yeah, that's kind of it, really.
Cool. And Will?
You can pretty much find me anywhere on Resident Evil Central. Obviously, we've got 9 days till Resident Evil 4 Remake comes out, so we'll be playing that probably hundreds of times. Not long after that, we've got the 27th anniversary of Resident Evil the series, and I'll be doing the Resident Evil food collaboration with the game Flavor Drink, so that'll be on the anniversary date. And then obviously me and Phil will be going to WASD at the start of April, and then I'll be also at Insomnia. So I'll be coming to bother everyone there.
Nice. Thank you very much again to my guests. It's been an absolute pleasure just waxing lyrical about The Last of Us with you. So check out the links in the description of this video. Show them some support and love. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, then give it a like. Consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content, including many other videos on The Last of Us, Resident Evil, and horror gaming, as well as my live streams, which will be covering the release of Resident Evil 4 Remake, which I am absolutely more excited for than I can possibly say. Check out the links in the description to join my Patreon for as little as £1 per month, or donate to my GoFundMe and get your name in the credits of my videos, like those who will roll up at the end, who I want to thank for supporting me and my content. And thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.